How's it going?
This here is always foreign to me. Well, not too foreign. I'm used to it, but
Yeah, why do you think I chose like a nice little cafe, right?
yeah, yeah.
And as I tell everyone, it's more the
Never
fact
one for
that,
big, grandiose places.
look, the owner's happy to take a few credits to step out the back for an hour or two. Nothing more comfortable. Plus,
Yeah, I get you.
I can sit here, and the patients have access to being able to walk out the door when they want to. See? Non-hostile environment.
Sounds good to me.
So, Keith,
The way I like it.
what are you feeling that you want to talk about today?
A myriad of things. Mainly what's been going on with me. Out in Zafira. Getting things off my chest. Mainly just venting for the most part, I guess. Because, you know,
A lot of people
cranky
like to
old
do
man
that.
needs to yell at a cloud every now and then.
I get
Well,
you.
it's not constructive for me to. It's not constructive for me to do so around others because, well, I'm usually in a leadership position, so I need to keep a tight lid on things when I'm and remain professional. So,
Fair enough. In general, a leadership position does come with the stresses of its own, and showing weakness, especially considering how I've seen things done in Zafira all my life. Yeah, you show weakness, you normally get a knife in the back of the neck.
and that's happened to me one too many times. Well, to get back into it, I suppose a little bit of getting to know you is in order.
If you would
You're fine
like,
with
by
that.
all means.
Everybody likes doing their traumatic backstory dump, but I actually ask if people want to hear it.
Ah, well, in my case, it's part of the job, I guess. But there's not too much to me in general.
I've got to condense down to a damn science at this point. For me, the life, my whole life is pretty well summed up as I worked as a intel officer and intelligence agent for the CIA pre-fall. The fall in my home universe was when. Are you familiar with a singularity event?
Would
Where
depend on the
society
context.
collapses?
Ah, that kind. I mean, I've read theoretical papers about the kind of thing, yeah.
Essentially,
Expands too
I,
far
at
and
the
then
time,
reaches the
was
point of overburden, strains, and then collapses in on itself in a fiery and self-destructive mess.
pretty close. Actually, not far off. It was a revolution between AI that were personality constructs of former living individuals who were turned into AIs to fit specific functions, then mass produced to basically automate civil services, the police, infrastructure management,
Synthetic uprising,
some
right.
governmental bodies. Yep. It led out in a worldwide conflict, ended up in nearly 80% of all life on the planet, including synthetics, being wiped out. It took about a year for it to happen.
Would make
Some
sense.
people sealed themselves away inside of a Demi Point device, but yeah, that was about it.
Fair enough.
I was doing an intel run on a offshoot organization for Arasaka called Messick Industries. They were under suspicion of inhumane experimentation, and the CIA needed intel so they could do a raid. essentially, of their offices and then have them tried. I had a degree in forensics, and I had a experience as an intelligence officer, so in spec ops, so they sent me in with my forensics degree to pose as a homicide detective under witness protection. I was going to work for the Lothrop City Police Department. Lothrop City's a fucking huge city. It's the size of the entire lower peninsula of Michigan, for context. And I was there to police it. I
Round
went
peg,
in,
round hole. Okay.
my kid, my wife and I went into witness protection. We went in, I got my job working for the Lothrop City Police Department, my cover papers, everything I needed. Started working went in, had a job interview at Messick Industries,
Already
and
understands
they
high-stress
accepted my
environments.
application, and I started working for them as
Pride training.
basically a for-hire intel broker. I was to go into other organizations, gather information on them, corporate espionage, basically. Gather information on them, bring the information back to Messick. They took the information, and at the end of it, they did something strange, which I didn't initially see as a problem. And at the end of every single job, they did a psychological evaluation. I didn't know what it was for at the time. Didn't think anything of it. Maybe they like competent employees, don't want PTSD-ridden liabilities walking around.
See if you were
I didn't think
compromised.
much of it. Yeah, you can't make informed decisions, and they let you go. That's what I was under the impression was happening. What I found out later was, much later, was that they were using me as a test group. Basically, they would expose me to certain stimuli, collect the information, and send me out to do another job. Come back to collect the information.
Are you telling me
Send me
that
out for a different job.
conditioned a Pavlovian response in you?
Pretty much.
Okay, well that's a start, isn't it? Okay.
Each job was under different pretenses. Like, they had different setups. They weren't always the same thing. One would be going in and getting into the science facilities with a flash drive, pulling some information off of the terminal, walking out. Then the next one would be raiding one of their facilities to gather whatever object they wanted to reverse engineer.
Violent and
The next would be interrogating someone, so on and so forth.
Oh boy, this is a bit complicated, isn't it? Oh boy.
Didn't know what they were doing at the time. My wife, Ashlyn, picked up on it after a while. And the last morning I remember before everything became this, before I woke up here, I woke up in the morning. I remember the day very vividly. I woke up, saw Ashlyn, kissed her on the forehead, gave her a good morning, like I always did. Got up, took a shower, got dressed, went to the kitchen, woke up my kid on the way in. I'll never forget the smile on her face when Ashlyn finally walked in the kitchen. I was already halfway through making an omelet, at this point, and then the obligatory yelling at the daughter to get up so she won't be late for school started.
Sounds like normal family life.
Amy gets
happy,
up,
healthy,
makes her
productive
way
family.
into the kitchen. We have a very rushed conversation. Amy wasn't paying much attention. I was scolding her for her grades. And Ashlyn brought it up first. She was shaky at first, but then started talking. At the time, I wasn't the greatest guy.
Communications issues
I wasn't a
don't seem a
stand-up
major
father
problem.
by any sense of means. I was
So this is good.
on the tail end of a very bad event. Basically, my wife caught me sleeping around, and she
Infidelity.
talked to me
Trust issues.
in front of me and said that it needed to stop. She said that I was going to have one last go with things before she broke it off her own mental health, and I agreed with her. That was fine.
Still open communication, though. Interesting juxtaposition.
She and Amy were both in the conversation. My daughter was an adult. She was 21 going on 22. She only lived in the house because she needed a place to stay while she went to college. I finally was starting to iron myself out.
Good provider, still.
She brought up the conversation about her suspicions with Bessic, and I said, yeah, I understand your concern, sweetheart, but I only have 2 more jobs. I only had 2 more jobs that I needed to pick up on the bulletin board, and I was done with my initiation, and I could go into higher ranks and start gathering information on Messick.
Didn't want to take desk job.
I remember dropping my kid off school, taking my wife into work, getting out of my Dodge and walking into Messick. I sat down. They gave me the assignment. I went, did the job, came back. It's horrible. They wanted me to clear out an entire warehouse.
No disregard for
I don't know what
life,
these people did,
but detached from compassion.
but I did the job. Keep cover.
Considering job.
Still regret it.
Driven.
Whenever the psychological evaluation, they set me in a chair, put a halo on my head, and all I remember is a searing pain after they asked me the first question. I woke up, and all I saw was, I was on the penthouse of a building, for one, in a couch. The people around me were foreign. I didn't know them, didn't know who they were. Memories started to flash in my head, and I started to piece it together, but everything was so scrambled.
Cognitive
Like
dissonance
something
after
had been forced into my head. It was excruciating. Things I haven't done, people I never knew, places I'd never been.
Time dilation from
What wound up happening was my sister. The first thing I remember was I couldn't breathe.
event.
I spent the first 5 minutes gasping for air before my sister Biz walked up to me and slapped me across the visor to calm me the fuck down. Kinda glad she did that, because she stopped what would have been a psychotic break.
Prone to psychoses.
We talked, she explained to me that they were in
Basic
Wofford
mania.
City. Been 200 and some odd years since the fall. I didn't know what the fuck the fall was.
Memory blank for
Wound up
200.
after a couple of minutes, taking a look over everything. She calmed me down, but I wasn't okay. Of course I wasn't okay. I spent the first day in my room. Didn't do anything, didn't go anywhere. We were in what was the former mayor's penthouse, an old five-star hotel that we ran to for cover because we were hiding from a corporation. I remembered my house. I remembered the police department office. Made my way there first to gather some information on what the fuck was going on in the city. The police department was in fucking ruins, covered in leaves and shit. The reserve power was barely keeping the goddamn security online. Thankfully, my security code prevented me from getting mowed down by turrets. Made my way in, gathered what information I could from my office.
Vivid
terminal
memory
was barely
outside of
active.
the
I had
memory
to
blanks.
solder a few wires, slap a few things around to get it working, but I finally did. And found out about the fall, found out what happened. There was a missing persons report made. Then I've read news articles that were left over on the machine. And then I closed it, downloaded what data I could off the server banks, and got the fuck out. Last 3 years have been, I don't know if I've stopped. I had a moment to think. At one point, the corporation that was chasing us finally caught up. I
Coping
brought in a
mechanism
kid
has been work.
because we were a humanitarian organization. That's what I was trying to start up.
From issues.
A halfway house for people to come and live under protection. The people who could defend against court. I was the most arrogant I had ever been. I took in this kid, or at least they looked like a kid at the time.
Self-appraising.
Covered
Introspective.
in rags, shoveled clothing, scuffed up face. You know, what you typically find. I never noticed her glowing eyes, but I let it pass. I figured her for another non-human. Wasn't unheard of. People from my home realm had glowing eyes, but they were elves, so that wasn't uncommon to see. So, I let it pass. A few months go by. June gets nabbed after I piss off a gang. By accident, they broke through the security of the building and set up explosives, and then took my daughter and then set them off. It took me 2 weeks for me to form a militia big enough for me to go on a full-on raid. We took everything out. I ran a counter-up as a distraction while the main team went in, grabbed my kid, and got the fuck out, killing every single mob boss, mob member they could find on the way out. Made a deal with the guy who ran the corporation. Unfortunately, you gotta make some deals with the devil. Got the intel I needed. God, I wish I understood how fucked the situation was. My kid at one point had their arm cut off, and they reattached it themselves and stapled their arm back together.
There had to be anger issues, I think.
I don't know why I didn't see something wrong at that point.
Huh.
Traumatized, blinded, I don't know.
Not ignorant. Idealist?
Sorry, I'm gathering my thoughts. Give me a moment.
Take your time.
Moving forward from there, a couple weeks pass after that whole fucking shit show. At the end of it, something extremely fucked happened. I was jumped by a guy that I worked with at another place that I was a member of at the time called the Starstruck Scouts. Apparently, a person I was associating with at the time was someone he deemed as a concern. And he manufactured this bullshit about her shooting him in the shoulder and blamed me for laughing it off because I called him on his bullshit. And he wanted me to feel the pain he felt. So eye for an eye, he shot off my limb, looking me dead in the face, while other people who I called friends stand over me and did nothing.
Feelings of betrayal. That's an understandable statement.
A big-ass synthetic that I knew at the time wound up picking me up and ran for the hills at the first sight of clear he could get. Brought me back to the shutdown. Over the next 3 weeks, I got repaired.
Don't laugh about the fact that you suddenly think of him as a chicken nugget. Not professional. Still funny, though.
Or at least the best they could do to repair me. My software works in a weird way. I was in something called a simulacrum. The chassis was from another universe. Essentially, what it is, you know what a simulacrum is, you've probably heard of it, but the software on it fools you into thinking that you can see your own skin, like you're in an organic body. That way you
The
don't
blurring of
have a
perception.
psychotic break. Pretty much. Well, after I got my limbs shot off, the software thought I was missing my limbs. So, I didn't see them anymore. I saw what was actually there, and I couldn't move them. I couldn't move a damn thing. What wound up happening was an AI that I incorporated into my system, created a piece of software that basically scanned my brain, or my thought process, and would move a limb if I needed to move it. And I had to live vicariously through them for the better part of 3 years. Still am, actually. Except now it's a piece of software and I can actually feel and move my own limbs, so not anywhere close to as bad.
So far seems to have been able to
Well,
keep
in fact,
track of things.
And breathing and organic now also helps. Synthetic organic. You get the point. Moving on. That whole shit show happened. Then you had Hyrule. My kid got kidnapped again when she went to go assist with some kid who was taken to Hyrule by a guy by the name of Ganondorf. Yes, it's as stupid as it sounds.
It's okay, I just
My
had someone
kid
describing
was,
Mobius to me. That was the thing.
I saw over the last few weeks, I tried to stay out of the conflict. I wanted nothing to do with Hyrule. I just got done dealing with the fucking gang. And I was prepping to deal with the IMC. I didn't have time to deal with this shit.
Seems to be
And
bouncing back and
my kid
forward.
got involved. She got attached to two kids that she found missing parents. And then decided to aid in the conflict. Eventually, Ganondorf had released something called the Twilight. It cut off communications. The Twilight was terrifying. You couldn't enter it without your soul leaving your body. You had to have a rune on yourself just to make sure that that didn't happen. And on top of that, the runes weren't a permanent fix. They slowly get corrupted. They lose their potency. And then it happened to you. If it weren't for the guardian rune that I had on me by my fiance at the time, I would have probably died. My daughter's friends decided to do something incredibly fucking stupid. They decided to go look for her without talking to the rest of the party, without talking to me. Because June had to be saved. Made a whole fuck ton of racket while my kid was trying to break herself out. And attracted the attention of one of Ganondorf's lieutenants. This lieutenant grabbed my kid, corrupted her, and brought her over to his side. The next 3 months were me fighting for every inch that I could get. All the while stopping people from infighting, stopping my own fucking degrading mental health the best I could.
He keeps talking about his mental health, but it seems relatively
And
silent because
eventually
he's
we
rather
went to go
introspective about it.
on the offensive, and we were pushed
Not
to a
too bad.
defensive because they had already taken Hyrule Castle.
Not seeming to suffer
We
from
decided
any
to do a
mania
commando raid
activacy.
while the town was being
Hyper-focused. He
protected. We
could be on
figured
the
out that
scale slightly.
eventually Zant would throw June in on the field. We'd wear her out. They'd pull them off the field. When they did, we go through the portal, fuck everything up as we went, grab June, get the fuck out. Fuck Zant up after we had done so. We got out of there by the skin of our fucking teeth. All 4 of my limbs have been cut free. I was holding them together with my soul. My kid survived. And then I abandoned Hyrule. Because at that point I had just barely gotten my kids out. Everybody else had left me, a guy named Cronus, and another decision maker out to dry, so I left. And there's not a day go by where I don't beat myself up over abandoning an entire world of people, but it wasn't my responsibility. I was there to get my kid and get her out. Once again, my fucking selfishness fucks me over. I get my kids out. I leave Hyrule, and for the next few months, I get berated near constantly by people who either survived or still dealing with it, calling me incompetent, calling me an idiot, berating me in any fucking way they saw fit, guilt-tripping me in any way they saw fit, calling me a monster. Selfish. I digress. It was not that great. I decided to focus on home. On shit that needed to be done. I had an entire corporation barreling down on us, and I needed to figure out a way to deal with them in a way that wouldn't fuck Lothric City and the shutdown over. Eventually, I got in a fight so bad that my chassis had been fucked beyond repair. By this point, my chassis had already been worn down. The chassis itself was only meant to last me
only 25 questions.
until I got this bike.
Just
it was only meant to be temporary, and everything was falling apart. The software was barely keeping me sane. The chassis was
certain things.
dilapidated. Joints were worn out.
He's got the difficulties.
Things were rusted, beaten up, patched over.
Gonna have to ask him the cat key.
Countless times. It was a shambling wreck. My kid came in at the clutch, transferred me over to something more advanced, and then my mental health leveled out. And that's when I realized something that my sister,
coping mechanism,
Kira, later confirmed. The entire time, from the point I was transferred, my personality files were unredacted and I was woken up. My soul was not working in conjunction with the rest of my chassis. And over time, I was getting more and more cynical, more and more machine-like. My behavior and my actions were getting colder, my responses were getting colder. My sister could see it, I couldn't. And she said if she had told me at the time, it would have ripped me apart. She was right. Fucked me up. It took me a couple of weeks for me to calm down. I took a mental health break from the shutdown for a little while. Had a long conversation with Kira. And that's when I decided to retire. I'd gone through enough. My kid was an adult at this point. She had gone to another realm with accelerated time to raise her kids. They were off to college. She was more mature, making more mature actions and decisions. Was excelling as a police officer. My sister was picking up more administrative privileges, and I was doing less and less as we hired more people on to work in the upper echelon.
The story, as well as the fact that...
And that's when I decided that I needed to do what I needed to do for myself for once in my life. Was it selfish? Oh, hell yeah. I acknowledge that fact. I'm well aware of that. Do I think that I'm going to get the dad left for the milk jokes eventually? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, at least it's better than dad left for the crack rocks.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Keith, I actually think I have some questions to ask you. You don't mind taking a quick questionnaire, do you?
No.
About 25 questionnaire. You can just go with, let's say, strongly disagree to strongly agree, right? Just give you a baseline of something here. So, when you're talking with a person and you want to continue the conversation, do you deliberately copy their body language or facial expressions?
Somewhat disagree.
Somewhat disagree. How about you monitor your body language, your facial expressions, so that you try to appear relaxed?
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree. Do you feel the need to put on an act in order to get through a social situation?
Somewhat disagree. Most of the time I try to remain genuine if I can.
Fair enough. Have you developed a kind of script to follow in social situations?
Somewhat agree.
And if you've heard someone repeat phrases, do you repeat them back to other people outside of the original conversation in the exact same way that you first heard them?
Agree.
In agreement? Do you adjust your body language or facial expressions to appear interested by a person you're interacting with when you're genuinely not?
Strongly disagree. Most of the time I'll only talk to a person if I'm actually interested in speaking with them.
Actually have interest. Understandable. So, in a social situation, do you feel you're performing rather than being yourself?
Maybe early on, right now, no.
So you're more disagreeing that you prefer to be yourself. You're not. Okay.
Yes.
I would say maybe. Yeah, that's a straight disagree. You're not strongly on that one. Okay. In social interactions.
Apologies for the vague answers.
Oh, no. You don't have to worry about this too much. It's just a rote questionnaire, just something I thought might work for this situation. In your own social interactions, you use behaviors you've learned from watching other people interacting. Like a parroting behavior.
Agree.
Agree?
At times, yes.
Not so much verbal, but more of a physical thing. I mean, that's understandable. You always think about the impression you're making on people when you talk to them.
Yes.
Strongly?
Always.
Strongly agree?
Yes.
Understood. Do you feel you need
Weary about that near constantly.
Do you need the support of other people to socialize? Do you feel that that's a necessity for you, or are you okay by yourself in a social situation like that?
It depends on the person and it depends on the situation. If I'm in a room full of people I don't know and someone I know is present, sometimes I'll rely on them. Most of the time, if I feel comfortable amongst the group that I'm with, think I can vibe with them, so to speak, I'll feel more comfortable talking with them, but
so, middle of the ground, like a bit of half and half there?
Middle of the ground, pretty much.
We can go with a non-committal.
half and half.
That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you practice your facial expressions and body language to make them feel like they look natural?
No.
No? Okay. So, a strong disagreement there. That was instantaneous. You don't feel the need to make eye contact with other people if you don't want to. I mean, you've been looking me quite solidly in the eye, so that's a good sign, but do you feel that that's something you don't need to do?
If I'm thinking, I'll look off to the right. If I'm trying to recall something, I'll look off to the right or the left. Very rarely do I look someone directly in the eye when I'm thinking about something or when I need to remember something in a truthful manner. Concentration causes me to look off in a direction. However, if I'm speaking to someone, it'll be straightforward with the occasional eye to the right or left, but I'll generally aim my gaze right back at the person I'm speaking to.
So a normal agreement? I mean, that's perfectly fair. That's perfectly fine. So when you're in a social situation, do you have to force yourself to interact with people? If it's, say, a group of people you don't know, you've walked into a room, you know nobody at all. Do you feel forced to interact with the people, or would you prefer to, say, shy away?
I have to have myself I have to amp myself up a bit. Yeah.
You have to acclimate and you have to force it a little bit. Okay, so a somewhat, you think,
Yeah.
or a regular agreement there?
Somewhat agree.
A somewhat? Okay.
Somewhat agree. Regular agree.
Okay, that's fine. Have you tried to improve your understanding of social skills by watching other people?
Yes.
They're your baseline? That sounds like a regular agree,
Agree.
not a strong agree, but a regular agree? That's good. Okay. This sounds like this is a little different than it was before, but it sounds like one of the other questions, don't worry. So you monitor your body language or facial expressions so that you appear interested by the person you're interacting with.
Depending on the situation, yes.
Okay, so you feel that that's a somewhat? Okay. So when you're in a social situation that you find, let's say, unfamiliar, do you find ways to avoid interacting with other people?
If I'm unfamiliar with it, I will usually walk off to the side and observe, get a lay of the land, ask a few questions to people who are more knowledgeable of the subject matter.
Settle in again.
And then if I have to deal with it again,
Okay, so
if I have to deal with it again, then I'll...
a somewhat agree then. Just you'll avoid the interaction until you're comfortable with it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Keeping it light and easy here. So, have you decided that when it comes to social situations that you feel like there's a set of rules that you needed to research to improve your way of interacting with people?
Agree. Strongly agree.
Agree? Understandable. Are you
I've
always...
since learned that it's very organic, depends on the case-by-case basis, but...
There is always going to be a case-by-case basis. You're most definitely not wrong there at all. How about your awareness of the impression you make on other people? You are always trying to stay aware of that?
Yes.
Strongly agree?
Strongly agree.
Okay. Very focused on
Most
how
of the time
people...
I'll directly ask the person.
Okay, no, makes sense to keep track of how you are perceived by other people. It's normally a worry that a lot of people have. You feel free to be yourself when you're around other people? You don't feel that you have to change who you are? Like you stick to being yourself?
I stick to being myself most of the time, yes. I only change myself if the person is of an important nature, like if I'm talking to fucking Malleus or some shit. That's
So-
when I take a more formal...
I somewhat
appearance,
agree.
but-
You can adapt by the situation that's presented to you. Okay, I understand. Yeah, that's reasonable. So, do you learn how to, outside of a regular conversation, have you used television, movies, or media in general to react to people? Like you... How's the best way to phrase it? Just right. Have you used media to mimic the body language and facial expressions that you expect to be used in certain situations socially?
No, because they're not accurate portrayals. Most of the time I go based on the people I'm around.
So a strong disagreement there?
Strong disagreement.
That's pretty good, yes. Well, not many left. So, again, reiterating some of the early ones, so you don't adjust your body language based on if you feel relaxed or not? Like, that you
Typically, no.
so you try to appear relaxed, but even if you're in a stressful situation?
Yes.
Okay, so
Agreed.
an agreement? Okay. When you're talking to
Even
other
if I'm
people,
uncomfortable with the situation.
you still try to at least
With him.
give off the relaxation. Okay, yeah, no, that's good.
It keeps people from behaving erratically and usually calms them down and allows me to speak to them and calm them down, bringing the energy back down to a
Keeping
more
it
relaxed
logical,
level to where I
very
can speak to them.
Very fair. So when talking to other people, you feel like the conversation flows naturally? Like that you're able to just keep a normal conversational tone and just topics just follow on one after the other?
Mm-hmm.
Just a regular agreement, you think?
Regular agreement. If my chemistry with the person isn't there, then naturally I'll meander the conversation into a close. But
Right,
most
right.
of the time, if I mesh well with the person, we're good.
Not a problem there. So, when you're in a social interaction, you always focus on your facial expressions. You don't forget about how your body language or facial expressions are perceived by others.
No, I don't.
Okay, so you don't mind what.
I can't remember much else.
Okay, so you don't
I don't
mind how
typically
you
mind, but
come
I do
off.
pay attention.
Ah, okay, right. So you don't pay attention. Okay, so a somewhat agreement there. Okay. And let's say, final question then. So, in a social situation, you're pretending to be normal. How do you feel about that?
Some would disagree. I try to remain as genuine as I can with the person I'm talking to. If I need to pretend there's something obviously wrong with the situation, or at least I wouldn't feel comfortable, I don't think. If I'm in a situation where I have to, I'll do it. But if I don't have to, most of the time I act like myself.
Okay.
I've recently discovered that it makes me incredibly uncomfortable to behave artificially around people.
Well. Now, obviously, you know that I was scoring you on a test there, right? So, from what I can tell, and what the general results of just the broad range of questioning there is that you're very neurotypical, which is a good thing. Your obvious psychoses that you've previously been close to and have had brushes with mental health issues in the past have not affected you in a long-term adverse way, which is most definitely a good thing. The fact that you've got a logical mind behind you and keep track of these kind of things in the first place leads me to believe that you don't have any major long-lasting effects, but are still potentially susceptible to manias, potential bipolar, a variety of other things. But you currently, as it stands, have a good social network around you to keep track of, and yourself at the same time, if you start spiraling out of control. You've got a good grounding. Now, that's at least a very good thing that I'm happy to report to you. It means that we don't have to worry too much about any medication or anything outside of just CBT. Yes, feel free to make the joke if you really want to.
It's fine. Kisei's already helping me with that.
Exactly. Fair enough. And considering the story that you have given me, which I will say, I gave you that test originally because there was a bit of bouncing back and forth between the particular time periods, so I was worried about your cognizance of keeping a linear storyline coherent for me. That's why I thought it's best to just check to see whether or not, because you had brought up that you'd had several minor psychotic breaks and that you were under stresses, which are particular things that can, of course, cause you to actually progress down a very bad path of, well, having a full-blown psychotic break. It's definitely good to know that you've got a good handle on yourself as a person there, Keith. So that's definitely good. So, as it currently stands, is there anything that you've sat down here today specifically about that you really want to get off your chest that has been feeling like it would bring you closer to having another one of those breaks again?
Zafira. Specifically what happened last week.
Okay, yeah, no, that's... Look, I'll tell you this. If it came to Sanity and Zafira, take that one on the road as a comedian, you'll have them laughing in the aisles every time.
Fair enough.
The amount of sanity on the streets of Zafira is a non-quantitative.
Non-existent. Yeah. I made that observation myself.
Considering what I saw yesterday at the auction, yeah.
Jesus Christ, don't get me started on that shit.
Oh, I know exactly why it was done and how it was done. Not that I'm going to really spill the beans on that kind of thing, but, well, I think some people that are in the midst of having their own mild psychotic episodes should not be given access to particular things. It's,
Money.
yeah. People with bad brain money go burr. Unfortunately, that was just how that was.
Yeah. The long story short is I went to the whole hell portal thing. I was inside of a restaurant eating a goddamn burger when a fucking Titan's foot came down, smashed the building I was beside, and I got the fuck out of there. Teleported out.
Yeah, I
The last few
got
days-
out on the evac teleports to Wicarium and waited until the main thing was over before I came back and started helping using Varsel's assets to help with basic triage on ground once the main bulk of everything had cleaned up. So I understand what you went through. It was not a pretty sight down there. Market was, well, a literal hellscape. So you're not the only person that understands, Keith. Trust me there.
The only part that affected me was when Belle released her letter and I read it. And at the time, I was quite literally on the ground, digging up bodies.
I didn't exactly have the full
Anybody
context
who
to
just-
reading that letter, unfortunately. I read it, but since I've only dug myself out of the grave a couple of months ago and have, well, it's only been a month or so since I've actively been in social situations where I felt comfortable to be around people properly as opposed to just skulking around, I kind of lacked the social connections and knowledge about exactly what the inference of that letter meant. Obviously, I could tell from how the reactions of people around me were that it was something big, but I'm unfortunately quite out of the loop on a variety of things, which I find helps me with my job, surprisingly, because I can help as a third-party objective observer to see people get the right treatment and are able to talk through their issues correctly.
I was on the ground digging up rubble at the time, using my eyes to scan the ground because I have ground penetrating radar in my scanning equipment. I found nothing but arms, limbs. That was it.
Yeah.
I had to identify bodies with fingerprints and DNA scans. And I was sitting here with them trying to somewhat justify someone doing something so horrific, and I couldn't comprehend someone doing that. Let alone an entire country that I came to find out.
Yeah.
An entire half of a country was justifying it.
The fact that I would have preferred to seen people with less limbs. That's fine. You see, if a person comes out from the rubble without the limb already, you can treat that. That you can tourniquet it, you can help that. But the amount of people that I saw that were pulling people out and didn't understand what a crush injury does to a person, that was terrifying. This person's arm is trapped under this rubble, let's pull that off them, and not realizing that the blood has gone necrotic in the arm and suddenly it spreads through the entire system and poisons them. I may have only been a GP for a couple of years, but I still have my doctorate. Yet no one listens. Oh, we've got to get them out. I would have preferred to have been in your situation. honestly. I really would have. Seeing people
Fair enough.
suffering and writhing and knowing that they're not going to make it because you can't treat a crush injury properly like that. Not with that many people around. That you need specialists. It was hard on everyone, so I can sympathize with what you went through.
Don't understand the thought process behind why a life, a person who had a family, who had a livelihood, who had a place in this world can just be swept aside as just fucking numbers for somebody.
That's the thing, Keith. It's a terrible old quote, and I hate to say it, but the loss of one life is a tragedy. The loss of 1,000 lives is a statistic. It's always been that way. You look at the media, right? Anytime it's a single person murdered, always the name, always the face. Anytime it's someone goes out on a rampage, pulls out a light machine gun and mows down a whole bunch of people in a shop, all you ever see is the body bags. Zafira is a rough place, and you understand from where you come from that the world isn't as nice as a lot of people make it out to be. All we can do as people is do our best to make sure that when people go through that, we can offer ourselves to them in the way that we feel best to help them. But we also have to understand that stepping back away from that, if it's too much of a weight to bear, is not a cowardly thing. Better to take that step back and compose yourself and be able to step forward stronger, ready to help again, than to crush yourself under the weight of it all and never be able to help properly.
Yeah.
Take the time you need to get your thoughts together. Don't need to look to the future, don't need to look to the past. Look at the moment that we're in right now. People are healing. You need to heal as well. Let the scars form. They remind you of who you are as a person. After all, a scar's just tougher skin, right? Reminds you of how you got it, and it's stronger for it.
Yeah.
I know I'm not the best person to always be saying it, but sometimes it just takes a person that's willing to lay it all on the line. I guess that's the Zephyrin in me, right? I'm not one to shy away from saying what I need to say to someone. Otherwise Gormander wouldn't have threatened to kill me. Anyway. Yeah.
Gormander's an interesting motherfucker.
Indigo sent me over to him to say that he might need therapy, at which point he threatened to put his fist through me. Kind of funny.
That about fits. That about fits.
You see, it's good to have a laugh, right? And the fact you still can, even after a heavy subject has been talked about, goes to show you're stronger than you give yourself credit for sometimes. You've got people around you, obviously. This Kira seems to call you out. You've got people that keep you on this straight and narrow, right? Trust in them as well. Because obviously, considering the background that you've told me, your ability to trust is hard-earned. So if you do have those that you trust, they have earned that. Put that trust back in them. Show them. Ask them. Make them aware that you need their help. And if you've got any more questions or need to unburden yourself more, you can always make another session with me.
I probably, most definitely will be doing that.
Not a problem.
As for myself, At this current moment, I think I've got all I needed to off my chest. I got somewhere to be.
Not a problem at all. We can happily call the session right here. Glad that you're
Thank you very much.
willing and open about things, Keith. I'll
Always have been, always will be.
offer you a fist bump and
A
I'll
tight lid on a ship.
walk you to the door.
Whoa.
Patient first. I'll let you take your time. Call me when you need me, alright? After all, you can always get me through the Versal comms or through my personals.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You have a good evening, Keith.